I'm Cher Kaufmann. I'm international artist and author of the Artful Mandala coloring book, the Ancient Alchemy coloring book, and Mandalas and More, a meditative drawing and coloring book for mind, body, and spirit, as well as a 5-part series. This is my 10 Minutes a Day series. This is Joy, Gratitude, Dream, Love, and Peace. These are wonderful books. And today I want to share with you a little bit about mixed media. We are going to be using highlighters and markers and colored pencils and watercolor pencils and maybe even a little bit of gel pen when we get down towards the end of this. This is kind of like what we're going to be working with here, but I'm going to show you in a very small scale because this is going to take us too much time for the video, but I do want to show you on something really small. So we've got just like a little 4x4 piece of paper here, or 3x3. And what I've done is I've just taken a pencil and I've drawn a basic outline of what I want to draw. This is just because if I used graphite has a tendency to move with some of the other media I'm going to use later. So by using my colored pencil, I'm actually using one of the media I'm going to be using in my actual coloring, so it will blend in much easier. So I highly suggest if you're going to be doing something like this, actually use your colored pencils rather than a graphite pencil. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab a highlighter. And the highlighter I'm going to do all my colored areas here, and I don't even have to make them perfect. I'm really just kind of coloring them in. I want to create a background space of color. Highlighters are they're not as dense as a marker. In other words, once I put a marker down, the colors tend to be really deep and they saturate into the paper, and it's hard to see through them. And that's what I'm liking about the highlighters, is that I can see through them. Light can bounce through them a little easier. So that's what we're going to do for our first step, and just kind of color our petals. And again, they don't have to be perfect with highlighter. My second step is I'm actually going to grab just a Crayola marker. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. I'm just using what I happen to have around the house. And I'm going to be doing a little bit of Crayola marker just around the edges of my highlighter petals. Just move them around. And I'm going to do just a little bit of, we'll call them eyelashes. We're going to do just these little tiny strokes. Whoops. Little tiny strokes. They're almost going to be like little eyelashes. Just to kind of soften that edge between marker and that highlighter background right there. And I'm also going to take a little bit of my marker here for my stem. And I'm also going to do a little bit of background. While I'm putting this type of layer down, I'm going to do a little bit of yellow highlighter in the background here. And again, I'm not doing anything that is requiring any particular precision. I'm just kind of wanting something down. I'll go all the way around my little flower here. And of course, if this was something that, you know, I needed to be really particular with, I would take my time. I would go slow, like all my other instructions, where the process is part of the magic of everything that happens. This particular layer doesn't require a lot of time that goes into that. My next layer is that I am going to do my watercolor. So I've got some watercolor pencils here. Watercolor pencils come in a bunch of different brands. The ones that I happen to like using, at least currently right now, are the Derwent Ink Tense pencils. And the part of the reason why I like them is it takes very little on the paper to create an intense color splash. I don't have to work hard at getting a lot of color down with these ink tints, because when I add water, the color actually gets a little bit brighter, which is something that I kind of like for what I'm working with right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put down just some color. And I'm not going to be real exact with this because I'm about to add a little bit of water, and that's going to spread this color around. So where I'm actually putting my pencil, my watercolor pencil, isn't exactly where it's going to stay. So this is going to be slightly different than if I were working with a regular pigmented pencil. So here I'm going to do a little bit of my watercolor pencil on top of my marker area. I'm kind of matching color to color right now. And I'm going to do a little bit here in the center. And I've got a little bit of blue. I'm going to do a little bit of some abstract kind of maybe background space here. And maybe I'll add a little bit of, get a little bit of this here. Okay, so this one here is, this was kind of a burgundy type color. I'm going to add a little bit of that burgundy color here too, into my outer edges. Now I know this is a lot faster and it's a lot messier than I normally work, but there's kind of a method to the madness, so to speak. I might add just a little bit of red here and a little bit of red here. A little bit of red here. So it's really childlike in a way that's really scribbly, which is not normally the way I work, and it's not as fast as I normally work. But this is a different kind of process. I'm doing something that has a slightly different feel to it. So now I'm going to grab a brush, and I'm going to get a little bit of water, and I'm always going to have a paper towel nearby because I don't want my brushes ever dripping wet. I want them damp. I don't want them terribly wet. I'm going to just get off the extra, kind of dab that out. And I'm going to begin to move this around a little bit. And it's going to give me a little bit of kind of a watercolor wash, in the sense that that's exactly what watercolor pencils do, is that they give you the ability to have that freedom of moving color around. Now this won't work with every kind of paper that's out there. If the paper that you're working on does not have the ability to hold much water or take much abuse in the sense that I'm rubbing on the paper, you might find that your paper balls up. But it's worth experimenting a little bit because you might find that there's some give that your paper will allow, and maybe you can get away with a little bit of this with maybe, there'll be some papers you can get away with a lot. This particular one happens to be a Bristol paper. It's a little bit thicker than a coloring book paper. So it's giving me a little bit different surface than a coloring book might. And what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of getting off some of my extra color from the outside edge because I'm about to move into this inner circle, and I'm going to move these colors inward. And you'll notice that the vibrancy that the highlighter had in the background helps to kind of light up these colors that I'm placing on top. And you'll notice that the marker that I put on the outside edges is allowing some depth of color without washing away. Okay, so this is going to be my first step. Now I'm going to give this a minute and I'm going to let my paper completely dry, because the next step I'm going to move to are my colored pencils. And I don't want to put my colored pencils on wet paper. The reason being, if I start to put the wax on top of the wetness, I'm more apt to create damage to my paper. So I want to go ahead and let this completely dry, and I'll be right back. Okay, so just as a quick reminder, this is the image that we're working toward, and in the few little steps that we've done with just highlighter, marker, and a little bit of Inktense watercolor pencil, you can see that just those quick steps, just done within a matter of minutes, we are already getting pretty close to the depth that was captured in this larger image. So let's see what it looks like if we continue. So I am going to just use some of the pencils that I have left over from another project that are very similar to the ones that were used on the other image originally, just to begin to add some different color, some dimension. We're going to add some highlights that are in here. So I'm going to begin to build my my colors in the same way that I would in any of my other projects that require colored pencils, which are those small little circles, starting with lighter steps, and then begin to build up from there. So I'm going to start with my orange because I kind of like the way this orange is around the edge, and I'm going to do some small circles here and begin to build this in towards my center. Kind of round off the edges here. I'm just going to add this for right now. I'm going to start with my orange. And my pencil doesn't actually have to work as hard because I have orange already down. I've got the pink that's kind of illuminating the light behind my pencil. So right now it's more like I'm just kind of creating more depth or dimension to something that's already existing. What's kind of fun about this particular project is that there's a little bit of freedom in that it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be exact. There's some freedom in a little bit of abstractness that's going on with this. I think every once in a while we kind of need to break free from everything needing to be kind of, I don't know, perfect all the time, right? So sometimes it's nice just to use whatever pencils you have handy, whatever tools you have available, and just see what can you do with them. Okay, now I'm going to start to begin to add a little bit of my deeper colors. I'm not putting a lot of pressure on my pencil here because I don't want this darker color to take away from what's underneath it yet. I want to still begin to build. And you can already see the difference between these two here and these two here just by adding this darker color in here. It's adding a little bit more of that colored pencil look. I'm starting to see those colored pencil textures starting to show up now. And you might notice if you've watched my other videos that this here I'm using longer strokes. I'm using more like longer ovals or up and down type strokes as opposed to those smaller circles. And it's, again, it's partly because my pencil strokes don't have to fill in all the white spaces, which those small little circles do. They sort of massage that color in. But I don't have to worry about that quite as much with this particular technique, this more abstract look. I can be a little bit more freer. Really, what I'm working on is more that it's about pressure control. Now, if you guys weren't with me here watching this, I probably would slow down just a little bit, but I kind of want to get to my next pencil here, so I'm trying to move this along so that you can start to see this coming together a little bit. Now I'm going to take this and I'm going to add a few little divots in here because I want to add a little bit of texture into my middle section. This is a little bit of a bright pink. Now I'm overlapping some of my other colors now so that they can begin to blend in. And I want to add some darker purple because I want a little bit more definition down here. So even though I'm being a little bit fast in my strokes here, you will notice that I'm still being very conscious of rotating my paper. I'm a big fan of making sure that your wrists and your hands are comfortable, that you're working at a way that is good for you and your body, and rotating your paper is one of the easiest and fastest ways to get this accomplished. Now I'm adding a lot more pressure here now because my pencil now is not only acting as a color agent, but it's also acting as a blender. I'm beginning to blend these colors together. What I mean by that is that when you use a blending pencil, you're moving the colors all into one, and you can use a light colored pencil the same way as you use a blender pencil. The difference here is that I'm actually adding pigment as well. Okay, now I'm going to go back with a little bit of yellow because I would like to maybe sort of fill in some of these spaces that my highlighter didn't really capture, or my brush strokes with my watercolor pencils, just so that there's color that moves around here and not necessarily, and I'm pushing pretty hard because I want it to match that highlighter look. And here I'm pushing pretty hard too. Okay, so the last thing that you can do if you want to get creative is that you can use a gel pen on top to add any extra details. So you'll notice that in my large picture here that there's some details that go around the edges, there's some finishing touches around the middle section here, and I actually even did some swirlies on the outside edges. And so if that's something that you want to play with, you can begin to add little things that go in the center here. It adds a kind of a nice little, not only adds a little sparkle to what you're doing, but it's going to create a different kind of depth to your image here. So I'm going to do a little wavy line around my edges. And again, they don't have to be perfect either. This is more about kind of an embellishment. I'm not worried about that the lines are absolutely perfect or equal or anything like that. This is just supposed to be about sort of a sense of freedom and sense of playfulness. And you'll notice that this gold pen actually draws real well on all of these different kinds of media, so it's definitely something that you can play with. Now, keep in mind, gel pens are wet, so you don't want to go smearing what you just drew. So if you draw something, either rotate your paper so it moves away from you, or remember to keep the back of your hand off of your paper, or use your pinky to kind of keep some space off, because the last thing you want to do is get down to your last little bits here and then have a smear mark. That's not very fun. But you could always make it work. Say you did it on purpose. And there you go. I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. If you're interested in watching more, click on the links below. Don't forget to subscribe. And from the Drawing Desk, I'm Cher Kaufmann. May you find more color in your day.